area of a parallelogram. It says find the area of this parallelogram. Be sure to include correct units in your answer. So when it says be sure to include the correct units in your answer, it means that they're not going to include it for you. You're going to have to click on whatever the unit is. And in this case, unit will just be whatever's shown after. So these are in meters, so your answer should be in meters. If these were in feet, then your answer should be in feet. So it just means we're going to have to click on something to make sure. So area is the amount of space something takes up on a flat surface, on a two-dimensional surface. So we're only thinking like length and width type idea. If you're thinking about the amount of space something takes up total, that's the volume. So that would be 3 dimensions. We need length, width, and height for that one. There is a video that we just did about finding the volume of a rectangular prism. So this one it just wants the area of a parallelogram. And a parallelogram is, if we have a rectangle, this is actually a parallelogram because the opposite sides are parallel. So the left and right are parallel, top and bottom are parallel. That is the basic definition of a parallelogram, is that two pairs of opposite sides are congruent. So in order to find the area of a rectangle, we would just do length times width. So we'd have length, width, and then we'd have our area. We go length times width. Well, if this is a parallelogram, and we can also draw a parallelogram like this. Sorry, that's a really horrible parallelogram, but it's like the square or the rectangle, we just kind of tilted it a little bit. We pushed it over just a little, made it. Then we can find the area the exact same way. They're both parallelograms. So we can still go area equals length times width. Sorry, that's very ugly looking. Skipped length when I was saying it. Length times width. The only problem is I have the length still on this one, but I can't call this the width because it's a slanted line. So what we need for width is you always need a line that's at a 90-degree angle like this. So we need to know this actual, and we can call that a little bit more height than this one. So instead of length and width, we would change it to area equals base times height. Still means the same thing, length and width, base and height, because I can call this the base and I can call this the height, okay? So really, it means the same thing. It's just an easier way to refer to it. So instead of L, we're going to say base. And instead of W, we're going to say height, because it's a little bit more representative of what we need to do this. So in this case, the diagram should give you, they'll usually be this dotted line to show you this is the height. And then make sure the base is the line that the height connects to. So 13 would be the base. 12 is extra information that we don't need. Okay? So let's go ahead and actually try this one out. So in this case, we have, here's a parallelogram, and it's kind of a, if we had a rectangle standing up and we tilted it sideways just a little bit. So here's our dotted line for our height, and that connects directly down to 13. It doesn't touch 16 at all for the dotted line, so 16 is extra information. We don't need it. So all we have to do for this one, for area, is base, which is 13, times the height, which is 15. And that is it. So we can multiply these, and I'm going to be a little bit lazy here and use a calculator here, just so that I don't have to do this in my head. So we end up with 195. 195. And then we need to go back to this. These were in yards. And keep in mind that this is, so I'm going to write it down here real quick. It was 13 yards times 15 yards. So 13 times 15, that's how we got 195. For the unit, we have to keep in mind we have yards times yards. Just like if you had x times x, you'd write x squared. We're going to do the exact same thing for yards. So we're going to have yards, but we had 2 of them, so 2. This is a very fast way. This tells me that it's area because there's 2 dimensions. There's length and width, or what we call base and height for parallelogram. Okay? So we're going to type this in. We're going to go 195 yards squared. Check. Yay! All right, next one. Okay, so I can see my height for this one. So here's my height for 13. And there's nothing down at the bottom where this is connecting. But the other rule for parallelograms, which we didn't talk about up here for a rectangle, if I know a rectangle the opposite sides are congruent, right? Because we have two short sides and we have two long sides. But they equal the same thing. The two short sides are the same length. The two long sides are the same length. So the same thing is true of a parallelogram. So the two short sides are the same. The two long sides are the same. So 11 is the top, which means 11 is the bottom. 15 is the right side. 15 is the left side. So I can interchange a little bit like that. So even though 11 is not written down here, this is 11. 15 is our extra information that we don't need. Okay, so we're going to do area equals base, which was our 11. Remember, we brought that down, and there's centimeters times 13 centimeters. So we have 11 times 13. So let's get out our fun calculator here. 11 times 13 equals 143. I'm going to write it here just because I didn't give myself enough room to write on the end. And then remember, you have centimeters and centimeters. So we have centimeters squared because there's 2 centimeters. So we kind of treat it like we would a variable. 143 centimeters squared. All right, check. One more. Okay, so now we have 2 dotted lines on this one. So they didn't draw a line straight down, so they could have drawn it here and just drawn it straight down, but instead they decided to draw it from here. It doesn't matter. It still means the same thing. It's just showing you that this is the height. And this dotted line is just showing you that it's continuing off the bottom. Doesn't mean that it adds to the length of the bottom. It's just showing you that it's connected. So I have 7, and it's connected to the bottom. Even though nothing's written on the bottom, remember the top and the bottom are the same. So this is 13 on the bottom. So my base is 13, and my height is 7. So I have area equals base, which is 13 feet, times 7 feet. So I have 13 times 7. So 13 times 7. If you do this in your head, that's perfectly fine. I'm just using the calculator to show you it's okay to use the calculator. And then we have feet times feet. So feet squared. All right. So I have 91 feet squared. Check. Yay, we did another one.